Well, some have described it as the lifeblood of Nigeria's economy, the crude oil sector, whether it's, well, the petroleum sector, whether it's crude, gas, and all of the other derivatives. It's vital to our economy, the success or otherwise of it. But over decades, we've not been able to really translate all of that wealth into real wealth for Nigeria's economy and Nigerians out there. So this morning, we yet again look at that issue, particularly as we count down. I don't know if it's a countdown now or count up to the operations of the Port Harcourt Refinery. Well, there's a Dangote Refinery as well. But all eyes on Port Harcourt because NNPCL had given a date that early August production will start, as well as the discoveries said to have been made of 19 illegal pipeline connections, 63 illegal refineries uncovered in Niger Delta and all of that. How do all of this play together? We're joined on the program by Mr. Olabode Shomi, Chairman, Energy Transition Study Group of NGA, a member group of experts on gas, a consultant, House Committee on Power, and CEO, Captree Limited. Mr. Shomi, you're welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning. Always a pleasure.
I don't know for you, having studied this sector for decades, more. Is there ever a time you say, what exactly is the issue? Why have we not been able to get it right? We'll get to the specifics, but I want to get your opening comments because these things, you can almost predict the headlines. 63 illegal refineries discovered, illegal connections, there's a sting operation here and there, and all of that. But still, it looks like we're not making much progress.
Okay, so the issues are multifactorial. It's like, let's say there's a couple and they're not able to give birth, have children. So is it in the eating habits? Are they quarreling at the wrong time of the month? You know, there could be 1001 issues.
Quite a very interesting example you give there. But...
Yes, there could be 1001 issues that are causing it, and which is the same with Nigeria. One of the things that has happened is that there's release of information in piecemeal. And there's the release of the same kind of information, but colored in different ways. There have been illegal connections to the pipelines as far back as 1983. And all you need to do is to demand for a record. There's a monthly report that the operators of the joint ventures produce, which goes to all parts of the, which goes to all the members of them. So if Shell were the operator for a particular well, there's a report that they give. And there have been indications that there have been illegal connections as far back as 1983.
So these things are not really new?
They're not really new. So the idea of calling it new is also strange. I mean, you also just need to, you also go through the records just online and see that there have been cases of illegal refineries as far back as the days of Jonathan. There have been cases where people had recommended that there should be some kind of way to convert the illegal refineries into legal means. You know, there's been all kinds of debates around them.
Yeah.
As per 83, 93, whatever, I mean, it's not exactly that people don't know where these people are. Neither is it exactly that they don't know. It's just that it's systemic and it's systematic. And I think it was the former MD of Chevron who said that the oil issues in Nigeria is like organized crime. And I think that because if you take an helicopter ride from Warri to say maybe Escravos or any of all those places, you just, once you are up, you just see smoke coming out and you know that these things are here. So it's not exactly that they're just discovering them. I think that would be wrong. It may be that they're now taking
They are rediscovering the previous discovery that they discovered previously.
Maybe, but I would want to put it this way, that they are maybe taking decisions that enough is enough, that they need to end some things. So maybe that may be a better way to...
Now, this is how a lot of Nigerians are receiving, or this is how they've received reports like this, particularly at this time. They're thinking, so is this some sort of deflection, a ruse to push the Port Harcourt refinery production, which, by the way, has been pushed severally. You know, videos surfaced recently when Mr. Melekari was coming to office saying before the end of this administration, that was the Buhari administration, we'll get all the refineries working. And then we had deadline of December, then earlier this year, then it was shifted again up until early August. Now we're past early August, we're towards late August, and still we've not heard anything. Correct me if I'm wrong. So a lot of people are thinking, is this a ruse again to maybe shift that timeline? Because we're talking about energy security. At the heart of the economic challenge is what we're buying at the filling stations, the price of petrol. So how do you receive this? Do you subscribe to those who think it's maybe a ruse to push the timeline? What are you hearing from the inside sources?
Okay, so what I'm even hearing from the inside sources may not necessarily be the more important thing. The more important thing will be an objective view, analysis of some of the issues. The fact of the matter is that when you look at the issues, I believe that they are not properly interrogated. Because, you have said that the refinery should work. What are the factors that is not making it to work? You see, when people come into governance, they come into a system. One person is not a system. So an example of a system is the digestive system. It starts with the mouth. The anus is part of it, some part of the stomach, your saliva. It's a system. One does not make a system. You will recall, I think it was about...
But one can be responsible for a system, because there's the human who's in charge. So you watch what you eat,
there's a difference.
What you do.
Yes. There's a difference between the person being responsible for the system and the person being the system. So the coach is responsible for the football team. But the coach alone is not what determines the beginning. You can be a great coach, but if your players don't want to play for you, they don't want to play for you. So I think it was Bola Ige around 2001, during the Obasanjo era, that made the promise on national TV that he would get the power sector working in 6 months. 23 years down the line, we're still on the same issue.
Other people have made promises too about that time, right?
Yes. I'm trying to bring out a point that when he made that promise, it was not out of sincerity. It was not for lack of sincerity, not for lack of purpose, but because he did not actually realize what he was dealing with in terms of the power sector. Now, Mele Kyari made a promise. I am not saying that is the same case with him. I'm just saying that if we don't get into more details as to why the refineries are not working, we don't know whether it is the CEO that is lacking for lack of intent, or we are facing a more complicated situation. So what we want to do, what we should do, is to say, okay, we have made this promise. On what basis was the promise made ab initio? Now, we are at the situation where the promise is not being fulfilled. On what basis are the promises not being fulfilled? These are basics.
Mr. Shomi, we have to go to Lagos, but I just need to mention two things. One, you were put in that position. Whether you're president, whether it's former President Olusegun Obasanjo that made the promise,
yes,
he's the president, the commander-in-chief, not even of electricity, of the armed forces. So you have the power. So there's no excuse now, say, after the 6 months, you now come out to say, in fact, they don't even come out to apologize and say, this is why it doesn't work. So first, you have a job to do, and you have to do that job. If you cannot do that job, kindly step aside and let the person who can do it do the job. Secondly, communication. But let's continue the communication in our Lagos studio. Jeffrey, Anne, over to you guys.
All right. So my own question will be towards prosecution of those who have been found culpable of oil theft. I mean, at the last hearing on the House of Representatives, I recall at the Special Committee on Crude Oil Theft held in Abuja, where the person, that's Abdul Karim Chukore, was talking about the cases that had been discovered, and so many. If I recall, it is 400 cases have been charged to court since 2019. And of course, about 2022, 200 cases were not charged. So we know that a lot of people, lots of arrests have been made, and so many other issues surrounding, we have found this. Most times the federal government has even destroyed vessels on sea. So we've seen a lot of things going around crude oil theft, but prosecutions have not really been made. The House of Representatives Committee is already seeking a special court to even try most of these cases. What is really going on in terms of prosecuting those found culpable? Or maybe because the prosecution is not happening or they're not seeing consequences, that is why it keeps going on. What do you have to say about this issue?
I mean, obviously, in any case where there is no deterrent, there's technically an encouragement. So if the cases are not being prosecuted, obviously people are encouraged to do it because it's consequences management that determines deterrence. Even for children, I mean, if a child growing up puts his hand in the fire and he gets burnt, the child, irrespective of whatever people say, will not go near the fire again. So there's a reason why when people are caught, other people are replacing them. It is because when they weigh the balance of on the balance of probabilities, they found out that it can be more profitable. So it is incumbent on the government, on the legal system, to make it unprofitable for people who get involved in that business. It is then that people will change, because there are a lot of factors that are there. It's not just the money. It's not. While the industry is grappling with its own issues and trying to evolve into some kind of a stable industry, the other things that are related, that the legal and other support services also need to do their work. So basically, it's symptomatic of the Nigerian system, which is not industry specific, which is across all industries, be it sports, be it health, and what we'll find there. So the legal imperfections are also part of what is affecting the industry. That's the reality of what this means.
Mr. Shomi, let's take a look at this video, or this just a short report, short report from our correspondent Charles Oporum. Just take a listen to this.
So this is an illegal crude oil refining site here in Okozi, by Mandon local government area of the River. Come. Now, all these sacks you see here are sacks of crude oil. It's not sacks of rice. It's liquid. Liquid is inside all of them. Come. You see? This is crude oil. This is crude oil. It's crude oil. So it's a major operation. It's ongoing. Massive operation. The Nigerian Navy, led by this man here, Commodore Desmond Ibu, is the commander of the Nigerian Navy ship Pathfinder. They discovered this place inside somebody's compound. Okay, you people tried. You people found this place. So they said they've arrested 2 people, and they are still trying to track down the other people, because it's a massive operation that's ongoing here. Now, if you remember, 3 weeks ago, the Nigerian Navy launched the 3rd phase of Operation Delta Sanity, which is an operation designed to reduce crude oil thefts in the Niger Delta. Nigeria is supposed to be producing 2.5 million barrels of oil per day, but because of crude oil theft, that number reduced to about 1.5. And the other numbers, of course, are in places like this. Now, see, look forward. You'll see, this is a chicken farm, this is a poultry, but they have converted the whole poultry to a storage facility for their crude oil, their illegal crude oil products. Come, let's go this other way. Let me show you something. Now, the environment is gone.
So, Mr. Shomi, we just needed to bring you up to speed. I'm sure you're familiar with this thing. So maybe for those who are not familiar, this is the reality we're facing as a country. A poultry farm converted to where they store crude oil in bags. Someone said, after God is government. So my question is, shouldn't we start with government itself? Because it's almost difficult to believe that if some state actors are not involved, this will thrive.
Okay, well, I mean, it's a probability, but it's not all criminal activities or criminal organizations that have state involvement. It's just the daring nature of man. I mean, it's like saying that every successful mega business has government involvement. It's not necessarily so. So you can look at all these as the criminal mastermind. So it's somebody involved in a bit. I remember, this is about 12 years ago now, when one of the pipelines was being, there was a pipeline in the east, one of the east pipelines, but it passed through some parts of the east, and that was being commissioned. So for them to, the pre-commission process involved water testing, which means that they will run water through that pipeline to see what comes out at the other side. They found out that the people's homes were being flooded. So basically, you had people for a new pipeline that was being constructed who had already made illegal connections to it and tapped the pipelines into their homes, even before it was commissioned. So what I'm basically saying is that as at today, we have a culture among our people that encourages illegality. And why that is very significant is that in every society, in every organization, in every company, culture defeats strategy. I think that's the maxim, is a management consulting maxim by Peter Drucker, which basically states that there is no strategy, no force, no effort you will put in if your actions are against the very culture of the people. So if the culture of the people speaks to illegality, encourages illegality, and does not question illegal gains, there is a limit to what doing the proper things will do. There is no law that can legislate brotherhood. So in other words, if two people are fighting, you cannot use laws, you cannot use shake your hands to make them friends. There must be a desire for the two people to be friendly. So if the culture of our people is not seeing all these things as illegal, if the culture of our people is not seeing a need for a change.
My apologies for my button. The reason I'm asking that question, I'll repeat it again. It is human nature, yes. Some things, this culture you've mentioned. That is why we have the instrument of state, and which is why I was very deliberate with that question, that you cannot stop people from committing crime. You cannot stop people from thinking of how to shortchange the system. But we're saying that if the system is formidable enough and sincere enough, they can stop these people. There's a legislation. We have a president. We have systems in place to stop these people. So kind of asking you, let's leave the people for a moment and face the government and what the government can do to a large extent to curb this. Because besides maybe foreign interests being involved or community being involved, the government itself is also being alleged to be complicit, including security agencies. I feel that if that is checked, which is why I'm asking you, how can it be checked? So that if we start from there, then every other person is a small fry.
Okay, so I was going to get to that. So whether it be security agencies, which also it's a subset of the community, whether it be the thing is that we first of all need to see these things for what it is, illegal activity. When we appreciate that, then everybody else can now be pointing. There will be a need to point a finger onto everybody. But having said that, very critical and very important is that there is a responsibility of law enforcement to be above board. And there's a responsibility of law enforcement to eke out strategies to solve all of these things. Organized crime is not new to Nigeria. I mean, there's in the US, there's in Italy, there's in so many places in the world. But in all of these places, the law enforcement agencies and all the related security operatives come up with strategies to evolve it. In Nigeria, there's the Office of the National Security Advisor, there's the EFCC, there's the ICPC, there's the police force, there's the Navy in this case. No one can say that if all these people come together, they cannot find a solution to this. So there is a need to also point a very strong finger on governance, not doing what they should do. But the balance of it is that if, for example, there was in the 80s, I think it was a notorious robber then, Anini, who for a long time was not caught. And one of the reasons was that there was accomplice in the police force and accomplice within the community. If people who do illegal things do not have support, they are likely more quickly to be arrested and the things nipped in the bud. So there is enough responsibility for government and governance to do their work, and there is also a responsibility for people not to accommodate it, saying that this is a normal practice. So that would be my own views to do. All
right, Mr. Showumi, let's talk about the August promise made by Mr. Mele Kyari on the refinery in Port Harcourt. Someone said, while we're taking the trending story, someone had said, oh, maybe it's time for local governments to start producing their own fuel. And because for over the years, this issue of crude oil, theft, fuel has been a major challenge. Now Refinery has been said, oh, we're starting operation in August. What is going on with the 4 refineries in Nigeria? And why has this date been pushed all the way? And August, or mid-August, as Kayode said earlier, we're not hearing anything about it yet.
Well, excellent. So I can only say to the extent that I know, and I can only say to the extent of largely what is public. One of the things that is indisputable is that there isn't enough information, public information, into the technical operations of the refineries. Because it will be interesting and maybe also a responsibility upon a body like the Nigerian Society of Engineers to come up with a white paper on why Nigerian engineers, who are largely the people in those refineries, are not making those refineries to work. Because that is also a responsibility for them. But the key point I'm trying to make is that we are told the refinery will work on so date, and it doesn't work. Now, we are not able to differentiate whether it is lack of competence, technical competence, or there is sabotage in terms of fifth columnists being in that place, or it's just lack of political will, or it's even funds. Because I do remember at a point in time, this was about 10 years ago, during the era of, let's just say about 10 years ago, when they needed to do some turnaround maintenance and they needed a vendor for it. They found out that in the old USSR, where the refinery was commissioned, the particular company that was involved at that place had ceased to exist. But more importantly, that company was no longer Russian, it was Ukrainian. And the few companies that took over those kind of operations had ceased working on those kind of equipment. So they had to now start talking to them to rewake old technologies, and those people were talking, charging an arm and a leg to start going into records. So if that were the case, let them make that public. If that is not the case, let them also make it public, because in the absence of facts, we are going to speculate. And the speculation, the easiest thing to speculate, which rightfully everyone is saying, is that, is there a competence gap in management within the NNPC? And that is the responsibility of them to answer. Because at this stage, in the absence of further information, we just have to agree that there may be a competence issue with respect to getting the refinery to work.
All right, so over to you, Kayode.
Right. Thanks, Anne. So, Mr. Shomi, do we just count our losses and move on? Because it's like we've been at this mountain for too long. So if this mountain will not move, maybe we should go around this mountain and really face the reality, because as has been said, it's just mind-boggling to think about. So if this deadline is not met yet again, what will be your advice? And when I say your advice, for Nigerians in terms of internalizing what is playing out, particularly amidst lack of communication,
yes,
on the one hand, and for government, which has a huge chunk of responsibility, what will be your advice in terms of either policy, in terms of drastic measures to be taken?
Okay, so I think in the industry generally, there's a communication capacity gap. And I say that, yes, I'm an engineer, but I used to work for a company called Ericsson. And like with most multinationals, they threw you around. And one of my last roles there was head of corporate communications, and I handled it for West Africa. So I'm speaking from a point of knowledge. The purpose of corporate communications, that's from an organization to its publics, whether internal public or external publics, is to bridge the perception gap. That is the gap between the wanted perception and the current perception. So there's a perception that NNPC or the industry will want, and there is a perception that they currently have. They have to bridge that perception. That competence is not seen. There's no strategy to it. In other words, they wait until crisis before they start to respond. Now, if they knew that, and definitely they will have known that that date will not be met, they should have come out earlier looking for subtle ways of passing the information to people so that it's not a shock.
So what is now the essence of having NNPCL? Because when we had the PIB turned PIA, said this is the silver bullet.
Yes.
The new dawn is here. Wow, things will change. Ministry of Finance Incorporated, Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated, and they said that this is what we really need. So is the NNPCL any different from the NNPC that we had in the past?
Well, it is different.
It's just in terms of the name.
No, it is. It is different. It's just that things take time to change. So one of the things that should also be clearly understood about the PIA, which many people seem to not get, is that the PIA is a law. And the laws are there for people. They're just guidelines. So basically, we're driving on the freeway, the express road. There are solid lines, right, and there are lines that are dashed. The solid lines exist so that you don't overtake, the Dutch lines you can overtake, and I mean all those.
Which, by the way, some drivers don't know this thing.
Exactly, exactly. So the point is this: that those rules on the road does not stop a drunk driver from being drunk and driving. The rules of the road does not stop a reckless driver from breaking the rules. So the PIA has come in as guidelines. It is incumbent on the players and the stakeholders.
But that's why you have, pardon me, Mr. Shum, that's why you have the police that will stop you and give you the breathalyzer, check if you are driving under the influence. And you know what happens? Points are chalked off your...
you know what should happen. So we don't do, first of all, we don't do points in Nigeria.
I'm giving you the ideal situation. And
yes.
that's the essence. You talked about working in multinational.
Yes.
These are things that should be a no-brainer.
No, so
your license is withdrawn. In fact, you can go to jail for that, and there is appropriate, punishment for that.
Yes, I totally agree with you. But we have to work within the reality of where we're in. So in the reality of where we're in,
even in Nigeria, there's punishment for driving under the influence.
Punishment for driving under the influence, but I'm not sure I've heard of something happening like that in the last 30 years, and I've been driving for a while. So, but that's not the issue. The point is this: it was just an analogy, in the sense that yes, there's a way things work in other climes to make it effective. If it has not been working here, maybe we want to copy all that. But the issue is that we cannot use the ideal to work on our reality. So, for example, in science, the basic thing in science, they talk about the frictionless plane when they're trying to calculate speed and all that, which means a surface that has no friction. No, everybody knows that that's impossible. But it is that ideal that is the theoretical framework for which we get all our reality. So the ideal is the law, which puts all the guidelines in place, which puts all the... But the culture within these organizations that have been put into this law is slowly changing. So it will take a while for all these things to work. What is important is that progress is being made along those lines.
When did you say the very first pipeline vandalism was discovered in Nigeria, Mr. Shum?
Interruptions, I think I said as far back as 1983. At least there's a 1983.
Isn't that a while enough? Because you said it would take a while. So a child born in 1983.
So that's a different thing.
I'm just saying that this is still in the same sector, still in the same realm of the conversation we're having. And let me just segue into what Nigerians feel every day. Till today, you are not guaranteed that you drive into a petrol station and you get petrol. Most filling stations are either shut or they're trying to conserve. They just allow a few cars in, shut it out, and then nobody buys petrol again. And this has been on, by the way, in some areas for more than a month, in fact, more than 2 months. And we're going on as though this is normal. Mr. Shomi, this is not normal. It's abnormal. And this has gone on for this long. It looks like those in authority that are meant to be responsible are keeping quiet and expecting Nigerians to do what they do best, adapt.
I don't think that would be the case, because we're just coming out of
the case that people don't get petrol, or
no, that the people in authority are just numb, or I think there is an evolution of crisis in a way the industry is not used to. So this is a conservative industry. This is an industry that hardly talks, and they are now being met with talkatives.
Why don't they talk?
It's the culture of the industry. So it's
doesn't mean it's right.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that that's the culture of the industry. So that even, I basically said something that NNPCL has not made information available, probably because there isn't a strategy for that. Probably because for multiple factors. That is inherent to whoever is on charge there. That's what he inherited. And that is what is evolving. So there are changes now, and they also need to adapt to those changes. But when we are going to plan for change, we are not going to plan for change on where we want it to be. We will plan for change on where we are, with the focus of where we want it to be. So there's a big difference. It is imperfect. It has all these issues. But we are going to start from all these our issues. And one of the ways of starting is effective communication between the people who are responsible and the publics. Even within the system, they do not handle their internal public well. So there is a lot of issues with miscommunication. You talk to people within the system, there are misgivings, they have different views from the leadership, they think more like fifth columnists.
Right.
And that word, by the way, came up from the Spanish Civil War, which was just before the World War. And what was it? So there was a Spanish general who encapsulated one of the Spanish cities, and he was being interviewed that how was he going to capture the city. So he said he had a column of army coming from the north, one from the south, one from the east and the west, the 4 column. But he said that those are not the people he's believing to deliver the city for him. He said he has a 5th column inside the city, and that is the one that will deliver the city.
Thank you for taking us down memory lane, at least to understand the history of that. So at the end of the day, there's still the challenge. And when I say those in authority, by the way, you can break it down. Those in authority in terms of government, those in authority in business as well, because it's a sector that has different players. There's the depot owners, those who transport, the marketers, even the petrol station owners, and the rest. So it's a multifaceted authority issue, really. So, but government has the sole responsibility to ensure, to set the tone, to be the one who says, no, don't do it this way. This is how you should do it, to regulate. That's the word I'm looking for. So maybe we should also break it down. So we've talked about the government, and NNPCL is still seen as government, whether or not it has changed form.
No, it is government.
It is government, even though it has changed the form. So let's break it down. In terms of this current challenge of fuel scarcity, how do we then appropriately say, okay, NNPC takes 50% of the responsibility, the depot owners, the marketers? Have you been able to look through and maybe in terms of communication, help people to see how they can also say, oh, you petroleum marketers, your responsibility is to do this. You're not doing it. You depot owners, do this as well.
I think if we were to break it down that way, I'll probably say NNPCL has 90% responsibility.
Not even 50.
No, I wouldn't say so, because they are, at the moment, they are the sole importers.
Right.
That is a significant aspect of the value chain.
Okay.
They also have certain overview, authority and responsibilities over the depot owners. So, but the depot owners do have a responsibility. So the issue really is checking the supply chain and checking who is responsible for what and where the issues are. Is he at the supply end? But one of the things that has been raised as one of the possible issues is the rate of the naira to the dollar,
right,
which is also affecting import rates and a number of other factors. But whatever be the case, there is a responsibility on NNPCL to communicate properly, not just to the public, but even within their own organization, so that they do not have a disconcerted organization when engaging the rest of the world.
And fifth columnists.
Mr.
Alabode Show, we would like to thank you. By the way, there's still the elephant in the room, subsidy, communication in terms of that. But we have to thank you so much, Chairman, Energy Transition Study Group of NGA, Consultant House Committee on Power, CEO, Capture Limited. Thank you for your time on the program.
Always a pleasure.
We go on a break now, and we have something for you. I can tell you this has been specially curated. The band joins us in a few seconds. The Cocoa Master is here. Stay with us on The Morning.